Hey butterflies, it's time to get up and move and adapt to your new wings and fly above life's challenges. You were created to soar and manifest the glory of God. Don't you know it's time? It's time for you to walk in your purpose. So no matter where you are in your journey, whether you're a caterpillar in the cocoon or if you're already transformed into a beautiful butterfly, remember, the Lord has already given you His power and every good and perfect gift that is needed to overcome any obstacle that may come your way. So butterflies, rise up and fly high. You're watching Transparency with Janet Sykes.
Hello, butterflies. I'm Janet Sykes. And we are so glad you're here with us on tonight because we're going to continue our discussion with the book, Forgiving What We Can't Forget. So I have three beautiful butterflies with me on tonight, and we're going to dive right into chapter 5. But before we do, I have a question. I have a question for our butterflies, and that is, butterflies, have you noticed a change in you since reading this book? Have there been any changes in regards to how you deal with people and your friendships? Well, I'm going to go first. Since reading this book, I have found myself having to apologize a lot lately. And you know what? One thing I've done since reading this book is I've been fast to apologize. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm still working on me in reference to when I get upset, I do need some time to get myself together because as I shared with you before, I do shut down. So when I get really upset, I need a few days, a couple days to get myself together. And the reason why is because I don't want to speak out of my emotion, but I want to make sure that what I say is correct. But what I found myself doing is once I pray about it, once I think about it, I don't wait for the other person to say they're sorry. I just go ahead and say I'm sorry, especially if I know I was in the wrong. So this book has really opened up my eyes. Not that I held grudges before, but this book is making me expedite how fast I say I'm sorry. What about you, Sister Brown?
Well, since reading the book, I have been more attentive to situations that have gone on, and it's made me to focus on if a trigger comes up that I can regroup myself. And like you said, be able to say, I made a mistake, I'm sorry, and try to go on and really not to try to hold on to it for a long time, because I have to admit, I am, once I get in my zone, I'm an overthinker. Mm-hmm. And so, I just keep carrying it on and on and on. But I've asked God to just please let me let it go, forgive, try to forget, and keep moving forward. Because if I don't, I'm not going to make any progress. And that's my goal, trying to deal with this thing of forgetting and going on with life and not being stuck in that particular moment.
I think that I'm guilty too. I am an overthinker too, Sister Brown. I will analyze a situation till I can't analyze it no more. I'm just like I'm just dissecting it, and sometimes right. I overthink things, and that prolongs the forgiveness piece. But throughout this book, it has taught me how to look at things for what they are and deal with it and keep moving. But what about you, Dr. Nina?
I find myself wanting to seek forgiveness of others. Like when I was at work today and someone else made a mistake and I took the blame, I said, never mind, it was my fault because I should have checked behind you. Even though it was her mistake, to my manager, I took the blame to cover her. So I find myself looking for ways to cover people and to offer forgiveness so they can see forgiveness and offer forgiveness. So I find myself putting out fires that way also. But like you and Sister Yvonne, I'm an overthinker. I like to analyze the situation out, and I find myself trying to fix the problem before it happens. So it's a eye-opening book.
It is. What about you, Thea?
Basically, I've been like putting a magnifying glass on myself, even more, and to basically, like, of course, like if I feel offense setting on, to just quickly remember to just go ahead and forgive, you know, even though it still may take a process, but just like try not to hold on to it, you know. And also, it's just teaching me like how to, it's not all about like what my intentions are. Sometimes it's about the other person and how they perceive it. So even though I may have good intentions on something and I'm letting the person know that, sometimes I need to just step back and just listen to them with how they perceive what I said, and just basically just know it's just not about me. You know, it's just not about what my intentions were and all that. It's also about listening to them and also just get a clear understanding of where they are.
You know, I think that's important to take, you know, look at it from another person's point of view, and do a self-inspection, like you said. You know, and this book does make you look at yourself, you know, how did you contribute, you know, and are you doing the right thing? And so in reference to forgiveness, because we can linger and get stuck in a place, but it's helping us to look at ourselves, look at the situation, don't stay there, but keep moving beyond that to forgiveness. So I think that this book is an awesome book. And like I said before, ladies, butterflies, if you have not purchased this book, you want to get this book. This book is an eye opener and it will help you. I don't care where you are in your walk with the Lord. This is a great source for your personal library. So butterflies, let's just dive right into chapter 5. I don't want to get ahead of myself, but chapter 5 says collecting the dots. I thought it would say connecting, but it says collecting the dots. And chapter 5 really went back on her childhood. And I think that Thea touched on something on the last chapter, how when you go to the counselor doesn't start right there where you are, your current state of mind, but she likes to dig, or he likes to dig deeper into your childhood. And she discovered that some of the ways that her thought process and her patterns was due to how she was raised. And I know that when she started talking in this chapter, I had some flashbacks of my own, and it made me think about some of the things I do is because of the way I was raised, or the way I've seen other people in my family model things for me. And, you know, that's why they say that mothers, we are our daughters' best examples, or we are their best teacher, because they watch us, they mimic us. And I look at my daughter, and there's some things that she does that I do. And it's so funny because it's like, do I really do that? And then my husband has to remind me, you do that. And so we have to be so cautious of what we do in front of our children or those who watch us, because they will mimic what we do. But enough said. I want to jump right in. I know for myself, I did not highlight anything on page 56, but did any of you highlight anything on page 56?
No, I don't have anything underlined.
Okay. Now on page 57, I do have something underlined, and it says, we all have a story, and then we all have a story we tell ourselves. Revisiting the past can be scary, but if we want to fully heal, we need to dig into our story to understand what's behind the curtain. Forgiveness isn't just about what's in front of us. Sometimes a bigger part of the journey is uncovering what is informing us from long ago. Woven through our experiences is a connecting thread that pulls the beliefs we form from our past into the very present moment of today. So even though it's hard, let's lean in. I'll go first as I tell my story. And I'm going to stop there. But basically what she's saying is, in order to deal with the future, we have to look at our past and find out why, what is it that it has cultivated us and got us to the point we are now. And she says, you know, revisiting our past can be scary, because a lot of times we don't want to go back there because it causes us too much pain. Did anybody else have that highlighted?
Yes, I did. I had it highlighted, circled, did everything I could to put emphasis on there, because we all do have a story. And like you said, it caused me to go back and to reflect, back when I was younger, in those formative years, a lot goes on in our families and relationships at that formative year. And we, as parents, a lot of times we don't even understand, or we don't even realize what role we're playing, trying to get through that situation. But as our children grow up, and as we grow up and mature, then we realize, oh, that's why I do what I do, or that's why that person does what they do, or that's why that person reacts, because of the things that have happened in the past. And that's why I guess sometimes it's so hard, because there's I know for me, a lot of things that have happened, I don't want to revisit that. Mm-hmm. But in order to get to the point that we can actually forgive, we got to go back, deal with that, and then move forward with the forgiving process.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I agree. Nina.
And I want to go back, because I actually did have something highlighted on 56, but it carried over to 57. And it says, I started to recognize how much we write scripts to help us navigate life experiences based on our past experiences, and how much those scripts turn into belief systems that inform our actions. And that's so true, because we take what we learn and what we've been through in our experiences, and based out of those, that's how we react, or that becomes our reality. Although that may not be the true reality, that's how we live our lives.
That's true, unless we go out of that environment. Because I know that some things that I've learned as a child, it took me leaving home and being exposed to other people and knowing that, hey, that's not the way you do things, or, that's not how it's supposed to go. And then my whole mind frame changed. Right. That can also happen as well. And that's why it's good to venture out sometimes, and I just say that just to be saying it because it's true. So with that being said, anybody else have anything to say about page 56? Anybody else have anything highlighted on 56? Okay. I like what she had in large print at the bottom. She says, forgiveness isn't just what's in front of us. Sometimes a bigger part of the journey is uncovering what is informing us from long ago. She repeats it again because that's important. Sometimes we have to go back to our childhood, go back to the beginning of our triggers or things that we happened to us long ago in order to deal with what we're in right now. So I thought that was very important. Again, I wanted to emphasize that and put emphasis on it. Anybody?
I want to say too, I had that particular phrase underlined and circled. And like I said, this particular chapter, it really caused me to go back and to look at my childhood and some things. And especially as, after I got married and I came into relationship and stuff, because I had a lot of issues with my father. And because he was a provider, but he had 3 girls. And I guess what I felt I needed at that formative time, I needed more nurturing and hands-on and look, but he didn't give that to us. But as I grow older, I realized you can't give what you don't have. And he came from a broken family, and he didn't have a father, and so he didn't see it modeled, so he didn't know how to share it. And I promised myself that if I ever had children, that I would try to make sure that I poured into, that I loved on them, that I engaged with them, and so it's hard for us to go back sometime and look at the past, but we're products of our environment. And so, if you realize that, then you have to make some decisions that I'm going to try to do a better job at addressing that particular item or situation.
And that is so true. I know when I first got married, the women in my family, they thought that, and I got this from them, keeping your house clean, cooking dinner was a way of showing your husband that you love him, and you just concentrate on keeping the house spick and span. And my husband was like, okay, I want the house, clean. I want food cooked, but that ain't all I want. So come on now, that's not important to me. Okay, I want my house clean. I want you to cook, but that's not, what the most important to me is you showing me affection, you being there for me, and everything else can wait, because we can order out if you too tired, to cook or whatever. So, and I had to learn that because, I've been taught, from some of the women in my family, make sure your house is clean, make sure you know how to cook. You cook for him, and that's a way of showing him. But that wasn't what my husband's love language was. And so I had to change my mind frame, and it had to be turned around. And so again, it goes back to how you were brought up. And at that time, that's what was important to the women in my family who were wives. And so, but and I ain't afraid to share. I married somebody younger than I am, and so he wasn't. He didn't want no cooking. So with that being said, you learn from experience and how you were brought up. So, and I just had to bring that out because that was the first thing that came to my mind. That it's so funny how you have these mentors and they do this in front of you, and you pick up things. But then you got to learn also, you got to know how to separate the meat from the bones, as they say. You learn it, but then you got to pick out the things that's right for you and your relationship and for your life. Right. And so we cannot be carbon copies of other people, but we have to be ourselves and what fits best in our lives. Anybody got anything to say about what I just said? All right. So that was good, Sister Nina. That was good. Sister Brown, in reference to that. Before we go to, well, let's go on to page 58. Did you have anything highlighted in page 58?
Not too much on this page right here.
Okay.
Let's see. I made a note. Okay, I did make a note though, on the side. How it's just not about your childhood, kind of like what we just said a few minutes ago. It's not just about your childhood, it's also about your parents' childhood as well,
Yes. Because it affects your parents and how they raise you. Because my mother's mother wasn't very affectionate. So when my mother raised us, my mother wasn't very affectionate. I mean, it wasn't that she didn't tell us she loved us, but it wasn't like I do my daughter. Like every day I'm kissing her and I'm saying, Mommy loves you, and my mom, she didn't do that, Christmas, I love you, or she'll say, I love you, but it wasn't like overly like I do it now. I think I tell my daughter I love her so much now because my mother didn't do that a lot. I knew she loved me because I didn't want for anything. I knew she loved me because we had a nice home. I had things. I knew she did things to show me that she loved me. In those days, parents didn't actually say it all the time because her mother didn't say it all the time, but she took good care of me. And I knew because she took good care of me that she loved me. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's understood. It's not spoken. It's just supposed to be understood.
Yes.
And that's how that generation was.
Definitely so.
The generation before them didn't give it to them. Like Miss Yvonne said, they couldn't give it to you.
And as Mother Eliza used to say, she said, Jan, people can't give you what they don't have.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right.
And so when you know a person and you know that they're not able to give you a certain thing, a certain component or whatever it may be, it's because they don't have it. They don't have it within themselves to give it. But back to you, Thea. What else were you going to say about that?
No, it's just good to actually sit down and maybe discuss some things with your parents. Ask them certain questions, just to see how it was for them, growing up, and to better understand maybe sometimes why they do or don't do certain things as well.
And a lot of times parents just didn't talk. My mom was very firm. And I see how she is with her grandkids. And I'm like, okay, you can give us none of that. You know, so but my mom was very strict and she was very firm. And so there were certain things that she just wouldn't talk about. You know, I had to get it from my aunties or somewhere else because I wasn't going to get it from my mom. You know, and even now to this day, you know, I can joke around with her and talk to her. My mom is so funny because she can dish it up, but she can't take it when we give it back to her. When we serve it back to her, she can't. She's a very fun-loving person now. It's funny how parents get a little lighthearted as they get older. They're different with their grandkids, and you see a totally different side of them.
It's altogether a whole new ball game. Especially for me, like I said, you know, my kids waited till we're 70 years old almost, you know, to start having, you know, grandchildren. But, you know, that is one thing that once you have those grandchildren and they come into your life, you're not the same person you were when you were the parent to your children. I had my granddaughter here 2 weeks ago. And I mean, she was only here for the weekend, but she ran me ragged, you know, but we did what we had to do. And, you know, just talking about, you know, the things that, and I was always taught early that you need to establish relationships and traditions with your children. And so for the last 4 or 5 years, my granddaughter would always be near us doing holidays, and I always would decorate. And so she was here 2 weeks ago, and she came in and she said, G-Ma, she says, what's the problem? She said, you don't have any decorations outside and you don't have any decorations inside the house. And I said, you know what, G-Mom, you know, I just haven't been in a good place and I just can't. But, you know, the love was there. And she said, well, we're going to finish eating our lunch. She said, and we're going to go back into the shed and we're going to get those decorations out. And we are going to decorate. And that's exactly what we did. We went out, got the decorations. We did some on the outside. We did some on the inside. And I have to admit that it made my heart just, I mean, I was just so happy and thrilled that, you know, she had recognized that that was, you know, that I poured those things into her when she comes to the house, you know. And so she wanted to make sure that, you know, we were happy and that we felt good and it was Valentine and we wanted to show some love, you know. So it's so important that we pour into our children. We may not have had it when we were young, but we need to really pour into our children so that when we get, like when we got married, then we don't have a whole lot of junk that they have to be trying to work with and work through, you know, because opposites attract each other. And so that's why it's so important that we really work on relationships, even though they may not have been good when we were young. When we get into other relationships as we mature and get older, that we will be able to pour into others. And so a lot of times it doesn't have to be a whole lot of forgiving and having to forget, because we've made those necessary steps to pour into that relationship.
I think that's important. Yeah. That was very good, Sister Brown. And one thing you said made me think about something that Nina said a few chapters ago, and she was saying how we have to leave a legacy of forgiveness for our children and our children's children, because if we be an example now of teaching our children not only traditions but leaving a legacy of how to let go, how to forget and move forward, that's important as well. And that was great. That was really great in reference to being able to talk to your parents and learning from your parents. And, you know, we learn what to do, but we also learn what not to do with our children to become better parents. And like we said, our parents only know what they only can give you what they got, you know, what they have.
That's right.
It just depends on how they were raised once upon a time. So that was really, really good. Does anybody have anything on 59? I know I didn't have anything circled or highlighted on 59. Anyone had anything on 59? No. What about 60? I didn't have anything on 60 either.
No.
Anybody have anything on 61?
No.
I didn't even, it was talking about her childhood, but I did have something on 62. It says, I love my mom, so I stayed quiet. She was talking about, let me just go back on 61 when she was talking about the neighbor. I'm going to start at the bottom of 61. She said, well, I'm going to start when she said, I was about 8 or 9 years old when somehow connected with my grandmother who had never come back from my mother. My mom gave her a second chance and I was thrilled. And remember begging my mom, excuse me, I had some phone. Okay. I remember begging my mom to let me go visit her in the big city she lived in. I very much regretted that decision. My grandmother had a neighbor who became my biggest nightmare of sexual abuse. He used to babysit me when she would go to the doctor appointments. She went to a lot of doctor appointments. He told me if I ever told anyone, he would hurt my mom. I love my mom, so I stayed quiet. I decided that I was a bad person for saying the word about my dad and for stealing bubble gum from a convenience store one time and for not being strong enough or brave enough to run away from that bad man. I vowed inside my head to be a better person. The heavy feeling inside my heart was something I couldn't describe. I determined all the bad things were because rules were being broken. Some rules must be followed. Rules must be enforced. And whatever I couldn't enforce, I had to find someone who could or who would. That really stood out to me because of her pain. She kept it inside because of fear of her mom being hurt. But then she began to blame herself. And this is when we get to not asking people to forgive you, but forgiving yourself from past mistakes that you might have made or something that you might have done. And here it looks like she needed to forgive herself for what was transparent, because she said, I love my mom, so I stayed quiet and I decided I was a bad person for saying that word. Because when her dad decided that he was going to take the money, for you guys who read this chapter, dad took the money for the fair and paid mom's speeding ticket, and she was upset, and she thought that even though they were crying, dad was going to give them that money back and let them go to the fair, and they were all upset because of that. And so she mumbled under her breath. And this just had me thinking that even now, butterflies, even when we do things and we can't but forgive ourselves, we have to let that go too. We can't get stuck and we can't allow that to label us or allow it to label you because you made that mistake. You take on that as part of your person. That's not who you are. That's just where you were for that moment of time.
Right.
At that time.
Right.
And so as Sarah Jake said, girl, get up. We have to get up and we have to forgive ourselves and get up. And that's what we have to do. And sometimes it's difficult. But we look at ourselves and we say, how in the world did I get myself in this situation? How could I have done such a thing? What was I thinking about? And we all have those moments. I don't care where we are in life. Even we say something. I am so guilty of saying something and go back in the back of my head and say, did I say that right? Why did I say that? Because I'm gonna tell y'all something. I am so private. Y'all won't believe this, but only people who know me, I don't like sharing how I feel or my feelings. And when I let my guard down and I share with you how I'm feeling, I feel so out of sorts after it's over. And it takes me a moment to get over myself. Okay, I'm just telling on myself, I'm being transparent. It takes me a moment to get over myself and say, oh my Lord, I told them that. I shared that with them. Oh my goodness, what are they going to think? And then I get over the part of what are they going to think of and saying, oh, I'm so embarrassed. Then I get over the embarrassing part. I'm like, well, I was only being real. But, and that's where I am. I don't know about you. Anybody else ever feel that way?
Certainly, many a time, if I, especially with my husband, and like I said, opposites attract each other, and I'm like you, Janet. I'm real guarded with myself. You know what I'm saying? And I may have had a situation where I just wanted to talk to him and discuss a particular particular thing. But you know what I would do? I would write it down on a script it, just like she said. I would script it. So I wouldn't go all over here, around there, and try to just stay focused on what I was trying to share with him. Because if I didn't do it that way, then I would, fall all to pieces. I'd be crying and all of that mass confusion. And so I would sit down and I said, this is what I want to talk and discuss, and script it down, number 1, 2, 3, and go from there. So you have to learn, what you need to do in order to be able to express to that other person, what you want to have your concerns about. I guess that's what I'm just saying.
I'm going to have to try this, Mr. Brown, because sometimes when I want to break down, I'll start smiling and start laughing. And really, I want to cry. And sometimes I laugh to keep from crying. That's just, I don't know, a defense mechanism I have. And so I'll give all mixed signals when people think, oh, she's smiling, so she okay. But really, I'm not. I'm just laughing to keep from crying. I mean, that idiom is so true. But anyway, Sister Nina, you had something you wanted to say.
I was just going to say that that in our past, somehow that's a trigger that for me is when I share something when I was younger and somebody wouldn't told what I shared, and then everybody knew about it. So I started guarding my feelings and guarding what I was saying to people, because I always thought, well, if I tell them, who else are they going to tell? Can I confide in them? Can I trust them? And that's how I started to build my reality around, well, you can't trust anybody. Just hold it in. Don't say what you really want to say. And it still takes me now to break that down and to let that go. And so many people get hurt like that in the church because they shared something with someone and they told the church about it, or they shared it on the telephone line with the telephone ministry, and before you can even get home, everybody knew about it. And so that's a very personal thing, to be willing to open up, to let somebody in, and to feel that you're able to trust them enough to be transparent with them.
And that's so true. And that's how a lot of people do get hurt in the church, because people can't hold things. And that's why we have to be very, we have to know that it's the Spirit of God leading us to share it. Because when the Spirit of God is leading us to share it, then we don't have to worry about if it goes all over the nation, because it's going to help somebody. But I can totally relate, because that has happened to me. But one thing, when you were talking, it just jogged something in my memory, and I had to write it down. And that is something else I've learned from women in my family, is to be strong. And sometimes we can be too strong, and we hold all that hurt in, and then people think that we are so strong that they can do and say anything to us and we won't break. But in the inside, we are, because like I say all the time, oh girl, toughen up, you can get this, girl, just toughen up, you ain't gonna give in, girl, keep me strong, and that is a trick of the enemy too, because you can't hold everything in. You need an outlet. You need a place where you can be vulnerable and be able to tell people your innermost thoughts, and they won't judge you. And again, it goes back to what you said, but who do you talk to? You have to be led to that person and know when you talk to that person, they're going to keep it. Even when you get upset with them, they're not going to use it back on you. See, that's the thing. That's right. This person can hold it no matter what. And if y'all get into it, it's not going to come back up. It's going to stay where it needs to be, because that's what friends do. That was so good.
And they don't judge you or look at you differently for what you're going through at that moment.
That's it. And that is the most scariest part, is when you don't want people to look at you differently, because there are some things in our lives that we have done, or mistakes we have made, or even the things that we're going through, and people think you got it all together. And then when you let you become vulnerable and you take that mask off and you tell them, what's really going on, you don't want anybody to leave there and say, well, I thought you was so-and-so. I thought you was da-da-da. No, but you want that person to say, okay, this is somebody who is experiencing something. I still love her, and I still see her as God sees her. I still see her as this woman, and I don't see her any differently. Because
That's
when
right.
you learn to put yourself in other people's shoes and know that you could be in that same spot a year or two or a few months later, you learn not to judge people, but you learn to forgive them. You learn to be able to relate to them. And again, as we said before, we don't beat them over the head with the word of God, but we show them love, and right when they're ready for it, that's when we give it to them. So yeah. But Theo, you want to jump in and then you want to say where this going?
Yeah. I was just gonna say what what Nina said too, as far as like being very guarded and like keeping stuff to myself. And what has helped me, actually what is helping me is talking to a counselor. You know, someone that I can open up to. Sometimes it takes me a while to do that as well, but at the same time, I know in order for me to heal and move forward, I have to expose something, you know, that may be difficult to talk about. So I'm very grateful, you know, for my counselor.
You know, I'm so
Well,
grateful.
you know, I just want to say to you, Thea, that, you know, going to a counselor, it's nothing wrong with that. I have mine too. And I tell you, that's one time that I can go in there, I can put it all out, let it all hang. She doesn't know any of these people that I'm talking about, you know,
right?
and so you do what you need to do in order for you to get through this process of forgiveness.
Right.
You know, because a lot of times, especially, you know, you say you're going to a therapist, you know, people look at you sort of strange, you know, like that's a taboo. You don't do that, you know, but take care of yourself. Wonderful. I commend you for doing that.
And I'm gonna tell you something. You said it took you a while. It didn't take me long at all. Once I sat down and I said, "Oh yeah, this is one for me," I just let it all out. I was like, "Okay, this is what I'm going through. This is what I'm doing," you know. And she was like, "Okay, let's talk about this thing." So I love going to a counselor. I do, and you know, every now and then I need a checkup, and so I still go see one because it is healthy to do so. It is healthy to go to somebody and just let it all out. She don't know who I'm talking about. She ain't gonna never see him. And if I see her in the store, she gonna act like she don't know, but she already told me. You know, only reason she'll speak to me is if I speak to her. But she said if I ever come to her, she'll act like she don't even know me. And that's good because everybody doesn't need to go know who your counselor is. You know?
That's right.
So
that's exactly right.
I just think it's great. And like you said, get that person that you can talk to. But sometimes when your counselor's not available, you just want that girlfriend. That you know you can she can come over, y'all can take y'all shoes off, and you know, and you can curl up on one couch and she in a chair, and you can just share your innermost you know, I want to say secrets, but things that are going on that's on your heart that you want to share, you know, and just let it out. And you know that when she leaves there, it's gonna stay there, and she's gonna love you, and she's gonna pray you through. And I think that being able to keep things is a learned process because it's natural for us when we hear something, especially when it's just so good. It's like it could be in a book somewhere. And, you know, we have to learn to be able to keep things, even when someone else comes to you and going through a similar situation that you just heard from your friend, you still got to learn how to keep it. And that comes with practice. It really does. Practice. And so if you listening butterflies and you want to be a confidant to someone, it comes with practice. You got to practice being able to keep things no matter what. And I can say that about Mother Lysa was a mentor to Nina and I. She's gone on to be with the Lord now. But one thing about Mother Lysa, you can go and tell her anything, and she makes me, "Woo, Jan, girl, don't tell me that, Jan." But you didn't have to worry about that ever being repeated. And sometimes, Jan, I don't want to know. Jan, I don't want to know. But you can be just as real as you could be with her. And she was 70-some years old. Well, she just turned 79. And so, but I'm gonna tell you, that lady, she was young at heart and feisty. Yes. You can learn so much from her. And I say that to say this: she was a confidant indeed. She really was.
Wonderful.
Yes, but
and everybody, you know, everybody needs somebody that they can go and talk to, and you know, not that they can change the situation at all, but just to get it out there gives you relief, and you can sort of deal with that situation, I think, a whole lot better. Now, I can't say that I have, you know, this many friends that I go to and share things, but the Lord set it up that my sister and I have a younger sister. She's 5 years younger than I am. I'm 70, she's 65. And we started walking together. And out of that walking, I mean, so much had come out of that, our relationship. We reflected back on, you know, like I said, home, when we were children, why we act the way we act, why we respond to things the way we respond to, you know. So it's wonderful to have somebody that you can share with. And if you don't and you need to seek out that counsel, like we said, do what you need to do for your healing, for yourself. Yes.
Absolutely. That was good. Now, anybody have anything on 60? Well, 62, I want to stay there for a minute because at the end, she said she told her father what the man had did to her. And she wanted him to protect her. And she said he did absolutely nothing. Can you imagine how she felt when she went to her father to say, I've been abused by this man, and he had nothing to say? That could be heartbreaking right there. And so I want to talk about that because we've all been disappointed by people not doing what we thought they should have done or treated us the way that we thought we should have been treated. And, you know, even with that, we got to learn how to forgive and move past it. But think about it. This was her father. Can you imagine how she felt? The one that is supposed to protect her from everything. He said absolutely nothing. Nothing. In the beginning of the chapter, as you can remember, she said she had given up on men. She was like, okay, I'm not going to trust him. I'm not going to trust no man. Then she said when she met her husband, she made an exception. Remember?
Right. That's right.
So I think that was why it was so devastating to her, you know, when the marriage started to break down. Because, you know, she, all these years she had said, I'm not going to let them come into my life like that, you know. And then once she did that, then she was disappointed and she was hurt, you know. And so I'm sure that's why it was just so devastating, you know, because she had put all of her trust and faith in him. Yes.
And it probably took her back to when she was a child, to that place where she was abused and she was disappointed and let down. It took her right back to that moment, and she was stuck there all over again.
And that's what I was ready to say. That not being able to trust men, it began when that man abused her. And when he abused her, it started something within her. And then from that point on, she was saying, I'm not going to trust another man. I'm not going to trust another man. And then she let her guard down to trust her husband, and then he let her down. So now we're seeing how it is collecting, not connecting, because the chapter is called Collecting the Dots. We're collecting everything that's causing her thinking and the reason why she felt the way she did. And so, and that's the same with us. When things happen in our childhood that hurt us, that cause us pain, it affects us. It affects us. And it's nobody but the Lord Jesus that can heal us and can transform our thinking. But it takes practice as well, because it is triggers, just like triggers in her life that happened and caused her to think about those things. And then when we go to counseling, the counselor does make us think about, okay, where did this come from? Where did it start? Why do you feel this way? So that was really, really good. But then she said, my mom stepped up to the plate and she defended me. She said something to the abuser, and she said, but even though her mom said something, because her dad did not do it, she kept looking over her shoulder because she felt like, you know, my mom is a woman, but I think she felt like if my father, the man of the house, would have stepped up and said something, I would have felt more comfortable. Anybody else got anything to say about that?
Yeah, exactly.
Just the part about the when she said, I think I cried more about what my dad didn't do than I did about what the bad man did do. That right there, that was very deep. You know, to hear that part right there. And I wrote a note on the side that it was her, basically like what you just said, Janet, is basically her wanting that fatherly love, protection, and for, you know, a father to affirm her. And she didn't have that. So she was more heartbroken about her dad not being there than what actually happened to her sexually, from the man. So
that was
Right.
a lot. That says that hurt was really, really deep. Here's somebody that's sexually abusing you, and that hurt you because he took something away from you that you cannot get back. He broke the law. And then you have a worse hurt than that, a hurt that's deeper than that from your father because he did not protect you. Because that's his job. That's a father's job, is to protect their daughters. And so can you imagine her hurt and even have to go through the forgiveness for that, forgiving her father for not being her protector, not protecting her.
And the build up, because she didn't deal with her father not protecting her until her marriage broke down. So that was underlined underneath the whole time. So that's when most counselors take you back to your child and say, what was that 10-year-old child and how was he feeling, to heal the inner child before they can heal the adult.
Yes.
There's so much that goes on as a child.
But
and especially with, like you said, that relationship between a father and the daughter, that is a very, very delicate relationship. And that was what I was saying, with me. My dad was a provider. He was a provider. You didn't have to worry about a roof over your head, none of those kinds of things. You know what I'm saying? But he couldn't give what he didn't have. And it wasn't until after I was married, I had children, and my dad was deceased. And I had to make a trip. I made a special trip to the cemetery where he is buried. And I had to just say, Dad, I forgive you. I felt bad, that I couldn't say that, my dad, he was this and he did this for me and that type of thing. I said, but I realize now that I'm older and I've gotten some counseling that you couldn't give me what you did not have.
That's right.
And it goes back to what Minister Jay was saying, that how the women in her family taught her to cook and clean the house would keep her husband happy. So your daddy was taught providing will show love and keep you happy. So he was doing all he could to provide, and he was thinking that was enough because he just didn't know.
Right. That's right.
That's it. And I, and this is so good what we're talking about, because, a lot of times, we listen to people and they think they're giving us good advice. And that's why it's important for us to have, be prayerful and be led by the Spirit of God. And not only that, but to know ourselves and be true to ourselves and not try to be anybody else, because we can be the best. I was gonna say, I can be the best me I can be, and so can you. You're not a carbon copy of anybody. We're all made, uniquely made. And so we can listen to others, but we have to take the meat, separate the meat from the bones. I keep saying that, but that's what it is. Separate what works for you, take what works for you, and throw the rest out. Don't try to, put somebody else's life and try to fit it into your life, because it's not going to work. And so that was really good. But let's move on. Anybody got anything on page 63? I want to talk about page 63, and it's at near the bottom, and it says, it was good for my mom to teach us this rhythm of being kind and making up in the midst of silly girlhood selfishness, but it ingrained something deep inside of me that didn't mature past childhood. So my belief system around relationships complicates, and forgiveness contained expectations that didn't keep playing out quite so easily as I got older. I thought this is the only way it should always work. Someone is clearly wrong. Someone is clearly right. A person in authority declares that what was done must be addressed. The one in the wrong is scolded. The one in the wrong says that they are sorry. The person in authority instructs that the hurtful action must not be continued. The person who was wrong or hurt feels secure that if that action is ever repeated, there will be consequences for the offender. In this atmosphere of clear justice, the person hurt forgives. Forgiveness then leads to reconciliation, and the relationship is good once again. That made me think about Sister Nina. When Nina said, when you and your sister would fight, your mom would say, now hug and make up. With this kind of thinking, it complicated her relationships as she grew older. And so these are the things that she thought that forgiveness and relationship was all about, that someone had to be wrong. But sometimes you both take a part in the wrongness of a situation. It's not always one-sided. And so I can see what she's saying, and it's always have to be an authoritative figure, a mediator in between. No, because we grow, as we get older, we should grow, we should become more mature. And so we should recognize our wrong and not be so slowful when trying to correct it. And like I said earlier, you know, after reading this book, it's not like I stayed mad at a person for a long time, but this book let me know the importance of making up and, you know, getting that straight, confronting it, and forgive as soon as possible. Because you don't want that lingering around, because you don't know how much longer you have on this earth. And when you leave here, you don't want to leave here with any unforgiveness. And also, we want to love as long as we can. And, you know, we want to do more loving than more unforgiving. You know, we walk around with unforgiveness in our heart. And so with that being said, it just made me think about what you said earlier, Sister Nina, in the last chapter. Anybody want to comment on that?
No, that was good.
And so on 64, did anybody have anything else on 64?
No.
Because on 64, she was talking about how there was a separation when she was in school. There were the popular kids, and there were the kids who kept the rules, and she was one who kept the rules, and it followed her all her life. You know, it was a black and white kind of thing for her. Either you're gonna keep the rules or you're not. But there were no gray lines, you know, and she felt like an outcast because her hair was frizzy. She didn't have the best clothes. And so think about her self-esteem when she was younger. How she's talking about how she felt about herself. That has to affect her as well as a woman. And not only that, think about this thing with her marriage. Now she's thinking about, okay, am I good enough for him? You know, you can just imagine what she felt. Because think about in the previous chapters, when she was going through, she started brushing her hair. I mean, she just stopped caring. So that was good. Anybody have anything on 65?
The part where up at the very bottom, when she was at the playground, she said it was my dad's mother who made me feel like a terrible child for the few cracker crumbs that escaped, and my mom's mom who never came to get her and then allowed me to get hurt, my dad who didn't come home and didn't protect us, and the girls who were supposed to be my people. So basically what she was doing, even though she was a common denominator in all of those, she actually was allowing other people's actions to shape and mold her, you know, back then. So she basically was like putting the weight of the world on her shoulder by taking on everybody else's, you know, responsibility.
And just like you said, what that really affected her, because remember those friends she's talking about, they were her friends until they had an opportunity to go over and be popular. But in order for them to be popular, they had to hurt her. And so there that goes again. There she goes again, where she's building up this wall of, I'm not going to trust anybody. And then her father hurting her, I'm not going to trust anybody. Then her mother, her father's mother, her grandmother, her fraternal grandmother's making her feel terrible. I'm not going to trust anybody. Then you have her mom's mom, who didn't come back for her mother, but she wanted to go see this grandmother. And when she went to go see her grandmother, she was abused by this man. There's another layer of that wall being built up. So now she's saying it's all because of them. I'm like I am. And so she had all this hurt built up that she had to work through, but she carried all of this through her whole life. And not until now she's ready to deal with it. Wow. That's a lot right there. That's a lot.
And that's what the chapter was about.
Compounding.
The chapter was about collecting the dots. You had to go back and work forward.
You got to go back. She had to go back, and she had been carrying that all this time. And some of us carry things all this time. I mean, and it really made you think about some things in your life. Some good, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And it made you deal with it and say, okay, maybe that's the reason why I have my guard up so much. Maybe this is the reason why I'm not freely willing to tell you how I feel. I mean, you have to be really close to me to say, okay, this is how I'm feeling. You know, this is affecting me because I don't want to appear to be weak. I'm telling my own story.
That's right.
That's right.
You know, and so that's why you have so many guards up, because you don't want to be hurt.
Right.
That's right.
That's exactly right.
So that's good. And so on the next page, it says the greatest tale a human can experience here on earth is not suffering. It's feeling like the suffering is pointless and it will never get any better. That was so good, right?
Yeah,
there.
that's what I wrote that down.
I have that highlighted too.
That was good. The greatest tale a human can experience here on earth is not suffering. It's feeling like the suffering is pointless. And let me just stop right there. And when you feel like it's pointless, guess what you don't do? You don't deal with it because you feel like, why even deal with it? It's not going to matter.
What's the purpose?
What's the purpose? And it does matter because it shapes who you are, who you're going to become, and how you deal with things and how you react to things. So it's not pointless. That was so good to me. And it says, it will never get any better. It will get better if we deal with it. If we deal with it. And you know what? The truth is, sometimes we don't want to deal with it because we don't want to hurt other people's feelings.
Right.
I don't know about you, but I have some super sensitive people in my family. You know, I mean, and if you just say a little something, I mean, they are falling to pieces. I'm just going to be honest with you. And so we have to know how to address it, but we have to tell our truth so that we can be free. Right. And so that was just so good. That was good. Okay, anything on 68? Because I have something highlighted. I've been talking a lot. So somebody take it over. All right, anybody got anything on 68?
I just had something highlighted on the bottom of 66. Okay. And it says, and it's just one line, and it made me think. It says, in essence, we become what we feared.
Right.
And that is so true that you're afraid of, and you try to protect yourself from not becoming the very thing you're fearful of, or the very thing that's hurting you, and you eventually become that very thing that you never wanted to be.
That's so true.
You were hurt, and like the statement says, hurt people hurt people. You know, you don't want to do it, but it's all that other stuff that's gone on prior to, and you look, and here you are. You're doing the very same thing that hurt you to somebody else.
That's right.
Mm-hmm. That is so true.
That's kind of like a child who, say for example, they grew up in a house and their dad is an alcoholic, you know, and they see how their dad is and they're like, oh my goodness, you know what? I'll never be like him. Mm-hmm. But then somewhere along the line, they picked up that same habit as well, and they wind up being just like that father. You know, right. The very thing that they say they didn't want to become, they wind up becoming it.
And you know what? But that's a vicious cycle that can be broken through prayer. And not only that, but really being self-conscious of really, and that's when a counselor comes in also, because you can talk it out. And the counselor, if they're a good counselor, they're going to be honest and upfront with you. And they're going to tell you what they see. And then, you know, you can take the necessary steps through prayer, through reading the word, through getting the counseling to keep from being that person that you fear that you would become. That was really good. I like all of that. Good, thank you, Thea, for that. Anybody have anything on 68?
I have, when she writes, eventually I discovered there is one way not to join in the meanness and still escape being a target, by going silent and blending in to the point of basically disappearing. No words, no emotions, no telling, no closeness, no expressions whatsoever.
Now, before you say that, let's go back up, because I had that highlighted too, but because they go together. So let me just read the one before, and then we can expound on it. Because she said, It felt safer to fit in with the meanness than to be vulnerable and brave. It was not an option to be kind, since kindness exposes tender places where others would be able to hurt me the most. Toughness and roughness and joining in the mean game allow my vulnerabilities to stay tucked underneath an increasingly hardened heart. I can relate so much to that by being tough, and not allowing anyone to see that tender and kind. I mean, I was kind and I'm kind, but as far as that toughness and the roughness, no, you're not gonna get that close to me. Don't trust you like that. You don't know
those walls up.
Yeah, keeping my walls up because it was just better for me not to become vulnerable. And I think that when the Lord told me I was going to do this transparency with Jen Sykes. Okay, Lord. Okay, what is it you're going to want me to share? Because I'm sharing more than I am willing to share. That's how I know it is the Lord. Okay. But I like to keep people at bay, and the only way you get to come close to me is if I know you and you have. I don't want to say this word, proving yourself.
Proving yourself.
That you can keep things and that. You can love me for who I am. And when I take this mask off, and become transparent and I am me, then you can handle it, and it's not that, oh, it's what? You said that, what? Or you really like this? That's when I can let you in.
Right. And we put those walls up, never realizing the walls that we put out we realize that they are to protect ourselves from people coming in, but we don't realize that it isolates us, so we can't get out.
Right.
It does.
And like you said, you put the walls up, and it's very interesting to me as I listen to Sister Janet share, because her and we had spent several years doing things together. And when we first came together, I said, "Ooh, she's tough, she rough, And I always, and I guess a lot of that was because I was just self-conscious of myself in so many areas. I just try to, tiptoe and whatever. But the longer we stayed in the relationship and doing what we did, then our true personality came out, and we were able to, I could pour into her and she could pour into me. But prior to that, we had built up all of these fences around us that it took time for us to get to that point. So I'm just enjoying, this as we go through this process. Relationship require a lot of work. They require work and investment in. Yes.
It does. It really does. Anybody else have anything to say about 68? Nina, you read the second paragraph. What did you have on the second?
I was just saying that it's so realistic, and her description of everything, and how we turn inwardly when we're faced with bullies, and how people could put us down, and so we don't want to be vulnerable, so we'll crack a joke on ourselves first, so you won't get the first joke in, and then over time our voice is silent and we have nothing to say, almost as we're disappearing right before your eyes, because we don't want to share. We don't want to be hurt. We don't want to feel like we're different. I've been one that's been different all my life. And I never really felt that I fit in with anyone because I was so different. And I had to embrace that I was different. And I never knew why I was different. I just knew that I was different. So when kids would joke, I would say the joke first, so to make them laugh. So at least they were laughing with me and not at me. And so that just over time, at that age growing up, you had to deal with that and learn, okay, you should have never done that. So you have to forgive yourself for putting yourself in those positions and those circumstances.
And I think for me, I had to forgive myself. And I often think about a couple instances in my life, when we were younger and I made fun of people, because like her, she was in the crowd where obey the rules. I was in the crowd where I was popular. And so, I remember, and I'm going way back, but when I was in junior high school, I would make fun of girls who did not have clothes like me, who, and, to the point where sometimes I would make them cry. And I'm like, and, it's funny because years later, I was in college and I came home and I drove my mom to the doctor, and I ran into this girl, the very one that I would make fun of. And she recognized who I was. I didn't really recognize who she was, but she spoke to me. She was very kind to me. But it wasn't until I got back in the car, I realized who she was. And I thought about it, I said, wow, she has a kind heart, because I made fun of her when I was around my friends. But when I seen her one-on-one, I would try to, be kind of, nice to her, but not really that nice to her. And so, and when the Lord began to show me myself as I got older, I had to forgive myself for being so mean to people when I didn't have to be. But when we're young, there's some things that we do that we're not so proud of as we get older. And so I think about those times that we have to forgive ourselves from things that come back to our remembrance, because this chapter right here, it really brought not only things in our family back, but even things how we were when we were in college, when we were in school, just different things that transfer in our life, that not only did I have to forgive other people and really reflect on if I handle situations right, but I had to forgive myself on some things too, and say, okay, Lord, I need to forgive me because I wasn't so nice. And so with that being said, I thank God for this chapter, because it is helping us to collect the dots and find out, okay, this is how I got to where I am now. This is why I think the way I'm thinking, because this happened to me in my past. So that's really good. All right. So with that being said, anybody have anything on 69? Because I have a lot on 69, but who has anything highlighted on 69?
Can I just say something real quick, Jen, for 68? I just highlighted the bottom. I left that playground for the last time more than 40 years ago.
That was so good. That was so good.
Go ahead. You said go ahead?
Yes.
Okay. I left the playground for the last time more than 40 years ago. But to this day, I sometimes wonder if the playground has left me.
That is so good.
Yes, that's deep right there.
Holding on to stuff that for all those years, just constantly holding on to that stuff.
Holding on, and we got to let it go. We got to let it go. And butterflies, if you have this book, make sure you do not skip over chapter 5, because it really brings back to your remembrance. I mean, it makes you look at your entire life. But go ahead, Thea, you were going to say something else.
Yeah, that just really stuck out with me right there. It's amazing how we just sometimes, even when you maybe not thinking about certain things, but you realize that you're still holding on. Eventually, you just kind of like realize that you're holding on to something that happened way back when. And sometimes you question yourself, like you said earlier, like, why am I like this? Why do I act this certain way or whatever? And it has to do a lot with, basically, like she said, your childhood. That you went through, good, the bad, the ugly, all of that. So that just really touched me right there. That part.
Yes. Yes.
That was very, very crucial, that statement right there. And I definitely could identify with it. You all ladies are much younger than I am, but I am 70 years old. And some days sometimes I wonder if the playground has left me, even at 70 years old, of things that had happened earlier in my life. Yes.
Sister Brown, you look good. You don't look a day like you are 70 years old.
I keep thinking that. Every time she said that, I'm like, are you sure?
Positive.
Yes. So with that being said, anybody have anything on 69? Because I have almost a whole page. Because it is really good. Starting at the top. Anybody got the top of the page highlighted?
Yes, from top to bottom.
Yes. Mr. Brown, can you go start with the first paragraph, please?
Okay. I tell you all of this because things we learn as children stick with us. I would imagine as I shared my story, bits and pieces of my own story started to emerge in my mind. Fragments of memories like old movie clips clipped on. Some are delightful as the ones I have of playing with my mom. Some are painful as my dad leaving and not coming home to protect me. Some are as strange as a drunk driver hitting my house. Some are hurtful and my friends turning on me. I'm going to go just a little bit further. Those things that happen in our lives don't just tell a story. They inform us of the story we tell ourselves. If we listen carefully, woven throughout our narratives is a belief system that formed inside of us as children.
Yes.
And I think we have just, we've just focused in on that. What happens in the childhood, in the formative years, it will affect us.
Yes. And it says, I don't always think it's safe to share feelings. Rules are meant to keep us safe and should be followed. The people who follow the rules are much safer than those who don't. So she was talking about, first of all, I want to go back, but she was talking about, for me, it was a system of thought that included several things. First, it instilled in me a clear idea of what I believe I should and shouldn't do. Then she said, second, it impacted what she believed about other people. Third, she said that, Third, she said, it influenced what I believed about myself. And fourth, what I believed about God. And lastly, what I believed about forgiveness and moving forward in healthy ways. That was good. She's saying all of this, her childhood, what happened to her affected her in 5 different ways. And it can affect us in so many ways if we not deal with it. Anybody else have anything that they want to talk about on 69 or 70?
Keep going down where it says, my counselor likes to encourage me to collect the dots, and then correct the dots. We'll do the connecting and correcting in future chapter. But right now, at this moment, let's start at the beginning and allow your memories to leak out in liquid pen strokes. Don't fear how the world comes out to get tangled up in any sorts of timeline or feel like you have to ensure every detail is precise and correct. It's not about getting it all right, but rather getting it all out.
That is so good.
I for myself, I do a lot of journaling. And when I do that journaling, a lot of the issues and things that I deal with, I can reflect on them. Did I handle that right? The next time that comes up, maybe I need to try something different. And my daughter always tells me, she said, if it's important, then you need to script it. You need to write it down. And so that's how I got into the journaling part. I just think that's very, very important to reflect. At the end of the day, that's when I do my journaling, and I just go from morning to night, and it helps you to really address and look at the things that have triggered you or that have occurred during that day, and you have to make some decisions. Okay, if this comes up again, I'm going to have to try a different route. I'm going to have to try another part of the process of, getting past this point.
That was good. And what I like is the final paragraph where she says, there is an amazing person I want to make sure you don't miss truly meeting, the one and only glorious you, that you look at each day in the mirror, full of the most interesting experiences, delightful quirks, honest hurt, inspiring resilience, hilarious family oddities, and absolutely astonishing reflection of our Heavenly Father. I've never been so honored to meet someone. Hello, beautiful, beautiful you. That was a great way to end the chapter.
Yes.
That was a great way. And butterflies, you have to look yourself in the mirror and say, hello, beautiful, beautiful you. And this happens as you reflect back to your past and having a voice to tell it. It's not about getting it right. It's about getting it out. She's already told us that. So butterflies on tonight, we hope that you got something out of chapter 5. And remember, you cannot go forward until you deal with your past. Butterflies, we are so glad that you are still on this journey with us on tonight. And on tonight, we want to say, keep going. Don't stop. Stay with us. We are right by your side, knowing that the Lord Jesus is going to give you the strength that you need to make it on this journey. We're going to make it together. We are going to make it to the end, to the journey, to our place called forgiveness. Won't you still go with us? Come on, go with us. We want you to stay with us. So butterflies, remember, close the door on yesterday and walk boldly unto what lies ahead. Butterflies, join us next week as we discuss chapter 6. Butterflies, until then, be blessed and flutter your wings. Bye-bye.
Subscribe to Transparency with Janet Sykes. Then click the bell so you don't miss a notification. Afterwards, like Transparency with Janet Sykes on Facebook. Connect with our group, Butterflies of Transformation, while you're there. Be blessed.